B1SA has also introduced two other very interesting offerings. The one is, so I feel like I'm doing an advert here for B1SA. So maybe I am. That's because you're actually, many of you are invested in the business, maybe do some business with them and you can sort of get a circular dividend back. But B1 Link ERFX is just a tender management platform, which again fits very nicely into the continuing of the business. And then more recently, B1SA has launched a new product called Eco IQ, which allows businesses to do proper ESG assessment of those businesses. So what you're finding now is many corporates, not only are they wanting to analyze your business because you're a supplier to them, they also want to understand your ESG credentials, not just your BE credentials, because it impacts their supply chain. So this is an exciting prospect for B1SA. I must say the key jewel in the crown for B1SA's perspective is the B1 Link platform. And for us, that's what we think over time will have the immense growth, if you want to call it the network or almost exponential growth in the business. And we're very excited in terms of the prospects there. One of our other businesses that's also doing well is a business called TyTech. TyTech, as I will have explained to you before, is building a portfolio of water infrastructure-related businesses. Its first investment is into a company called Camjet, which has been in place for the last 3 years. And they've actually come to us now. We've got an understanding with them. If they find other interesting opportunities for acquisition, we're willing to actually fund TyTech's acquisition there. So earlier this year, they came with an opportunity to us. We didn't really like it. It didn't fit into the portfolio. But at the moment, we're actually looking to fund another opportunity. And Camjet, once again, in South Africa, is, or let's say, TyTech is a space we want to be in. With all the water infrastructure, the backlogs that we've got, we're all well aware of the challenges that we face. But with those challenges comes spend. And we think that this business will be well positioned. Just to give you a feel, TyTech's, as I said, its principal investment at the moment is a business called Camjet. We own 40% of TyTech. So if you imagine, we own 40% on behalf of our clients of TyTech. TyTech owns 51% of Camjet and has an option to take that up to 100% based on pre-existing parameters set a few years ago. Since acquisition, revenue of Camjet is up 113%, and the EBITDA numbers up 137%. And this is in the space of 3 years. So now that sounds fantastic. And at this stage, we should pat ourselves on the back and say, well, great job, because this thing, you almost have doubled your money, tripled your money. What we did at the time, though, when we went into the investment, is we were a little bit uncertain, especially around the water space, around Camjet. It was increasingly pivoting towards taking business from government and local government, municipalities and the water boards. And we were a bit uncertain about that, especially in the credibility of them settling debts, as you're aware. So in the investment, we actually put what we call a call clawback structure, in that when we made the investment, if the valuation of the investment underperformed by 6%, we could buy more shares off other clients, the other shareholders in TyTech, to give us our floor. But at the same time, if it does more than 15.75%, they can take shares off us. So there is a bit of a band of performance there. But overall, we're very comfortable with this. Most of you won't see TyTech specifically in your portfolios because you'll own TyTech via a pooling vehicle called Signify Capital. Some of our clients do own it directly. Invequity, and this is an area that I would rather not talk about, but we have to, I suppose, talk about all the portfolios, including some of the risks that we faced. So, and I'm about to say it again, you'll recall, Invequity is an investment that our funds have made. It owns livestock. Those livestock are managed by a farming entity called Starkvie through a contract farming arrangement. Now, this method, in fact, from a commercial perspective, is an incredibly attractive way of investing. More than half the livestock in the US is done through this contract farming type arrangement, because what it means is that the farmers don't have to raise the capital to acquire the livestock, but they get to manage the livestock, and then you get to essentially share in the profits. Unfortunately, at the end of Jan this year, Starkvie, the contract farmer, went into business rescue, and a business rescue practitioner was appointed. Starkvie sat with 16 million rands worth of cattle from Invequity. Now, while these cattle belonged to Invequity, the business rescue practitioner deemed them to be part of the asset base that was under the control or the purvey of the business rescue process. And I don't know how many of you have been familiar with the BRP process, but we've become intimate with this in the last 6 months, and you have very little control or authority. The BRP really acts a bit like God here and can override contracting in terms of the contracts. Fortunately for us, the creditors got together. We agreed to appoint a creditors committee, which now actively monitor that. So the business has been in business rescue. That's Starkvie. And remember, it's not Invequity that's in trouble, it's Starkvie. It's waiting to get back the assets that are under the control of the business rescue practitioner. In working with the business rescue, the BRP, we approved a business rescue plan for Starkvie, given that we're one of the creditors. And just of interest, this is an asset game. If the assets grow in value, cattle, and multiply, you, at the end of the period, get your asset back. And the business rescue plan is to grow the asset base as per the orange line. And you can see in the 7 months that we've been under business rescue, in fact, the asset base has been growing ahead of the business plan, which means that we will get our money back, both from the ordinary shareholder, the assets, and the preference shareholders will get their capital back. There's also there's one wild card here, which is to our advantage. We estimate that if the normal business rescue process just follows, we should see our capital back within 3 years, and dividends as well in terms of the pref shares. However, the primary cause of what went wrong in Starkvie was essentially a theft of assets from a farmer called Peter Carroll in Lichtenburg. Stole approximately 180 million rand of fraud within the business. We're a very tiny creditor of the business. And the BRP has instituted both civil and criminal claims against the estate, because unfortunately Peter Carroll passed away, and also put asset protections on the assets that sit there. So we are now waiting on the BRP to hopefully have some kind of success. Any success on claims from the Carroll estate will accelerate our return of the assets. So I'm happy to take any questions now. It's been a learning curve for us. Starkvie, and they're fully audited, signed off by the auditors, I mean, we would go to the farm, you'd count cattle, there's security checks, these assets are insured, not against fraud, and it's just amazing how when someone sets out to create a fraud on a massive scale, they can get away with it. But I'm pleased to say that we do expect a full recovery of our assets and some on top of that. Cool. All right. At this stage, I can stop sweating, because this is normally the difficult part of the conversation. One of our other investments is into a company called Bopo Malemo. But Bopo Malemo really is actually a holding company and an investment company into a business called Maestro Capital. And Maestro is building what they call a portfolio of non-bank lending businesses. Now, non-bank lending means it's companies that don't have a banking license but provide credit into the corporate sector. And in fact, within Maestro, the jewel in the crown is a business called Alizé. Graham McGill is here. Graham actually is the MD sitting there of Alizé. So put your hand up. Alizé is a trade finance business. So if you're an importer and you're bringing something in from China, and Graham, I'm going to butcher your model so you can stand up at the end. You're bringing in a container worth 30 million rand. What Alizé does is they actually will, when that container leaves the factory in China, they actually settle the payment. And when the asset clears customs on this side and comes into the possession of the importer then settles and pays back Alizé. At that stage, normally the banks then step in to provide then normal finance funding on working capital funding in terms of that. So Alizé, I can say, is one of the best boutique trade finance businesses in the country. So again, if anyone's looking to do some trade finance, Graham's your guy. The business, we on behalf of our clients invested an initial 10 million rand into Borpo or Maestro, and we have a further 15 million rand committed to the business. Now, the reason why this was an attractive investment for us is at the moment, again, and Graham's happy to probably over lunch explain, Alizé borrows money from credit providers at X%. They then go and lend that onto their clients at X plus 3-4%. So there's a margin there. At the moment, that X% is quite onerous. It's an expensive rate, and it varies depending on who the credit provider is. But by enhancing the equity on their balance sheet, they can borrow money at a lower rate. In other words, so instead of getting a 3-4% margin, they can go to 5-6-7% margin. And so the thesis for us to come in here is to say we're actually investing in this business to improve your balance sheet so that you can lower your cost of funding and therefore improve your margins. So we think it's a very attractive business. I've got some metrics on the right here. If I understand most of them, but again, if you want to know what an NPL is, then you can ask Graham at the end. It's non-performing loan, just in case. So I need to show that I do know something about the portfolio. Again, Kwelanga, another business that you'll be familiar with. I am on the home stretch, by the way. We timed it. I've got 40 minutes. I think I'm 32. Kwelanga is a business that does training. It trains employees of companies that, and these are upskilling courses. We acquired, and this is actually a nice story, a case study of a business that has gone through a rough time and has come out very nicely on the other side. When we bought